The transport shuttle descended through Terrafold's thin atmosphere as dawn broke over the northern ridge. Marcus Venn stood alone in the landing field, his weathered coat pulled tight against the morning chill. His right arm ended at the elbow, the sleeve pinned neatly where flesh once was. He watched the shuttle's descent with a mixture of anxiety and desperate hope, knowing his entire future depended on the woman inside. The farm was dying, creditors circled like vultures, and this contract marriage was his last gamble. He had reviewed her file countless times, memorizing every detail except what truly mattered. Whether she would stay when reality proved harder than promises. The shuttle touched down with a mechanical hiss, and the boarding ramp extended slowly. Marcus straightened his posture, suddenly aware of how he must look dusty, tired, incomplete. Then she emerged, and every worry temporarily vanished from his mind. Celine moved with graceful caution down the ramp. Her skin a rich violet that seemed to absorb and reflect the morning light simultaneously. Long silver hair cascaded past her shoulders, moving like liquid mercury with each step. Her eyes, pale amber with unusual depth, surveyed the barren landscape before settling on him. She wore simple traveling clothes that seemed inadequate for Terrafold's harsh climate, and she carried only 2 items: a modest travel pack and a sealed metal container she held with protective firmness. Marcus approached, extending his left hand in greeting. Celine accepted it, her grip surprisingly strong and warm. Her palm pressed against his with intention, as though establishing immediate trust through physical contact. They stood that way for a moment, neither speaking, both measuring the person before them against expectations built from digital profiles and desperate circumstances. Marcus noticed small details, the faint shimmer of her skin up close, the way her pupils contracted sharply in Terrafold's bright sunlight, the slight tremor in her shoulders that betrayed exhaustion from the long journey. She studied him with equal attention, her gaze lingering on his missing arm without pity. Only acknowledgement. "I am Celine," she said finally, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made even simple words sound intentional. "You are Marcus Venn," was statement rather than question, as though she had spent the journey preparing herself to speak his name correctly. Marcus nodded, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Welcome to Terrafold. The farm is a short walk from here." He gestured toward the dirt path leading through sparse vegetation. Celine adjusted her grip on the metal container and began walking beside him without hesitation. Her stride matched his easily, despite the unfamiliar gravity. "Your file mentioned crop failure," she said. "What grows here naturally?" Marcus appreciated her directness. "Not much anymore. We used to cultivate grain variants and root vegetables. The soil has been depleting for 3 seasons. Water restrictions make irrigation nearly impossible now." Celine absorbed this information silently as they walked, her amber eyes scanning the landscape with what seemed like professional assessment rather than casual observation. Occasionally she would pause, crouch briefly to touch the dusty earth, then continue without comment. Marcus found himself watching her more than the path ahead. Everything about her movements suggested capability beyond her delicate appearance. When they reached the farm's boundary, she stopped completely. Taking in the full scope of the struggling orchard stretched before them, the trees stood in uneven rows, their branches sparse and leaves yellowed. Irrigation equipment sat unused along the perimeter, rusted and broken. The farmhouse itself was simple but sturdy, built by hands that understood harsh environments. Celine turned to Marcus with an expression he could not quite read. "This place has good bones," she said quietly. "It wants to live." Those words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had spent years watching his family's legacy slowly die, feeling powerless to stop it despite endless effort. Hearing someone recognize the farm's potential after a single glance stirred something dormant in his chest. He led her inside the modest farmhouse, the interior clean but sparse, functional rather than comfortable. Celine set her travel pack down carefully, but kept the sealed container close. Marcus noticed how her fingers rested protectively on its surface. "What is in the container?" he asked, trying to sound casual rather than suspicious. Celine met his gaze directly. "Tools from my homeworld. Genetic materials. Things I could not leave behind." Her honesty surprised him, though he sensed layers beneath her words. Are they dangerous? Her expression softened slightly, only to those who would misuse them. I brought them because I thought they might help, if you will permit me to try. Marcus considered this carefully. He had taken a risk bringing her here, trusting a stranger with his struggling future. She had taken an equal risk leaving her world for his. If you think they will help the farm, then yes. Selena's shoulders relaxed fractionally, tension he had not noticed releasing. Thank you. I will show you when the time is right. First, I need to understand what I am working with. She moved to the window, looking out at the orchard with focused intensity. Where does the water come from? Marcus explained the complex system of wells and rationing, the corporate control of resources, the impossible fees that made irrigation cost more than crops could earn. Selene listened without interruption, her fingers drumming a soft rhythm against the window. When he finished, she turned back to him with determination, replacing the exhaustion she had shown earlier. Then we start tomorrow with what we have. Tonight, I need rest, and you need to tell me everything about this soil. Marcus felt hope kindle despite himself. This was not how he expected a contract bride to behave, passive and dependent. Selene spoke like a partner, like someone who had come to work rather than simply exist beside him. That evening, they sat at his small kitchen table with samples of soil spread across its surface. Selene studied each handful with intense concentration, occasionally bringing samples close to her face, inhaling deeply, rubbing earth between her fingers with practiced familiarity. Marcus watched in fascination as she sorted the samples into groups he did not understand. Your soil is not dead, she said finally. It is sleeping. Something has been taken from it that can be returned. Marcus leaned forward. What has been taken? Selene looked at him with eyes that held knowledge beyond her apparent years. Balance. Diversity. The microorganisms that make soil live have been depleted by over-farming and chemical treatments. Your earth needs to be fed, not just used. She spoke with such certainty that Marcus found himself believing despite years of agricultural education. Telling him soil depletion was irreversible without massive investment. How do you know this? He asked. Selene smiled faintly, the first genuine expression of warmth she had shown. Because I grew up in places where soil was everything. We learned to listen to earth before we learned to speak. Marcus felt something shift in that moment, recognition that Selene was not simply capable, but possibly exceptional. Can you fix it? She held his gaze steadily. We can fix it, together. That night, Marcus lay awake in his room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person moving through his home. Selene had accepted the small guest room without complaint, though he noticed her checking the door lock twice before settling. He wondered what circumstances had taught her such caution. What had driven her to accept a contract marriage on a failing farm light years from home? Through the thin walls, he heard her moving restlessly, as though sleep evaded her despite obvious exhaustion. Marcus almost went to check on her, then decided against it. She needed space to adjust, to feel safe in this strange new place. Tomorrow would bring work and opportunity to build trust. For now, he closed his eyes and let himself imagine, just briefly, what success might look like with Selene beside him. Morning came with Terrafold's characteristic pale light filtering through worn curtains. Marcus rose before dawn as always, and found Selene already awake. Standing in the kitchen with her silver hair braided back efficiently, she had changed into more practical clothing, simple work pants, and a fitted shirt that allowed free movement. I could not sleep well, she admitted when she noticed him. New places always make me restless, Marcus understood completely. He started preparing a simple breakfast of grain porridge and dried fruit, the standard fare of struggling farmers. Selene watched him work with his single arm, the efficient movements born of years of adaptation. He expected questions or offers of help born from pity, but she simply observed quietly until the food was ready. They ate in comfortable silence, both aware that today would set the pattern for everything that followed. After breakfast, Selene retrieved her sealed container. Marcus watched as she carefully entered a numeric code and opened it with reverent care. Inside, cushioned in specialized foam, were dozens of small vials containing what appeared to be glowing liquid and seeds of various sizes. These are biological cultures from Morales, she explained. My homeworld developed them over centuries to restore damaged ecosystems. They are illegal to export because corporations wanted exclusive control. She met his eyes seriously. I stole them when I left. If anyone discovers I have them, they will take them and probably imprison me. Marcus felt the weight of her confession. She had entrusted him with dangerous knowledge within a day of meeting him. Why bring them here? Celine closed the container carefully. Because I could not let them be used only for profit. These organisms can save places like your farm. That matters more than corporate patents. Marcus respected her conviction even as he recognized the risk she had taken. What do they do exactly? Celine's expression brightened with enthusiasm, the first time he had seen genuine excitement from her. They reintroduce beneficial microorganisms to soil, create symbiotic relationships with plant roots, fix nitrogen naturally, retain moisture more efficiently. They essentially reset damaged earth to a healthy state. She pulled out a specific vial containing faintly luminescent seeds. These are the key. They grow quickly, spread their root systems deep, and release compounds that wake dormant soil. Within weeks, barren ground can support diverse growth again. Marcus stared at the vial, understanding dawning. This could save the farm. Celine nodded. This could save many farms, but we must be careful. If we succeed too obviously, people will ask questions. They spent the morning preparing a section of the orchard for the first planting. Celine worked with impressive stamina, her movements efficient and purposeful. She showed Marcus how to prepare the soil, mixing in specific ratios of the cultures she had brought. Her knowledge ran deep, far beyond basic farming. She understood chemistry, biology, and ecological systems with the fluency of advanced education. Marcus found himself asking question after question, and she answered each one patiently, sometimes pausing to find the right words in his language. By midday, they had prepared a small test plot, approximately 20 square meters of ground treated with her cultures. Celine carefully planted the glowing seeds in precise patterns, explaining how their root systems would interact and spread. Now we wait, she said, sitting back on her heels. If the soil is receptive, we will see results within a week. Marcus sat beside her in the dirt, both of them dusty and tired. What if it does not work? Celine looked at him with unwavering confidence. It will work. I have seen these seeds transform worse ground than this. Trust me. And despite every instinct telling him to guard against disappointment, Marcus found that he did trust her. They returned to the farmhouse as Terrafold's sun reached its zenith, the heat becoming uncomfortable. Inside, Celine filled a basin with water and began washing the dirt from her arms and face. Marcus watched from across the room, noticing details he had been too busy to observe earlier. The graceful line of her neck, the way water droplets caught light on her violet skin, the quiet strength in her shoulders. She caught him looking and smiled slightly. Do I have dirt on my face? Marcus cleared his throat, embarrassed at being caught staring. No, I was just thinking you work harder than most people I have hired. Celine dried her hands carefully. I did not come here to be decorative. I came to build something real. She moved closer to him, close enough that he could smell the faint floral scent that seemed natural to her biology. Marcus, I need you to understand something. Where I come from, I had no control over my life. Every decision was made by others, every path chosen for me. This contract, coming here, it is the first real choice I have made. Her amber eyes held his steadily. I chose this. I chose you. Not because I had no options, but because this felt right. Marcus felt his breath catch slightly. The intimacy of her words, the vulnerability in her admission, stirred something protective and warm in his chest. I am glad you chose this, he said quietly. I needed someone who understood what struggle means. The afternoon passed in practical tasks, repairing irrigation equipment, checking inventory, planning the next phase of work. They moved around each other with increasing ease, developing the wordless communication that comes from shared purpose. When Celine needed a tool, Marcus anticipated and handed it to her. When Marcus struggled with a task requiring 2 hands, Celine stepped in smoothly without making him feel inadequate. By evening, they had accomplished more than Marcus typically did alone in 3 days. As darkness fell, They prepared dinner together in the small kitchen. Celine proved surprisingly skilled at cooking, transforming basic ingredients into something flavorful. "My mother insisted I learn," she explained while stirring a pot. "She said a person who can feed themselves well will never feel completely helpless." Marcus set the table with his left hand, movements practiced and efficient. "Your mother sounds wise." Selena's expression grew distant. She was. "She died when I was young. After that, I lived with relatives who saw me as a burden." Marcus heard the pain beneath her casual words. "I am sorry." She shrugged slightly, but her voice remained soft. "It taught me to rely on myself and to recognize when someone offers genuine kindness." She looked at him meaningfully. "You have been kind to me, Marcus. Not everyone would be." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I am just treating you fairly." Celine shook her head. "Fair treatment is rarer than you think. Many men who seek contract marriages want servants or ornaments. You have treated me like an equal from the beginning." She ladled food onto plates. "That matters." They ate dinner in comfortable quiet, occasionally sharing observations about the day's work or plans for tomorrow. Marcus found himself relaxing in her presence. The initial awkwardness of having a stranger in his home fading into something warmer. After dinner, they sat on the farmhouse porch, watching Terrafold's moons rise over the orchard. The night air was cool and clear, stars brilliant in the unpolluted sky. Celine wrapped her arms around herself against the chill. Marcus retrieved a blanket from inside, draping it over her shoulders. She smiled her thanks, pulling it close. "Tell me about your family," she said. "About the people who built this farm." Marcus leaned back against the porch railing. "My grandfather claimed this land when Terrafold was first colonized. People thought he was crazy, trying to farm a moon with thin atmosphere and poor soil, but he believed in it." Marcus's voice grew softer. "My parents continued his work, improved the land, built the irrigation systems. They died in a transport accident 5 years ago. Since then, it has been just me." Celine listened with full attention, her amber eyes reflecting starlight. "That is why you cannot let it fail. It would mean losing them again." Marcus nodded, surprised by her immediate understanding. "Exactly. This farm is all I have left of them. Every tree they planted, every system they built, it is their legacy." Celine was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Then we will save it. Not just for you, but for them. For everyone who believed this place could thrive." Her conviction touched something deep in Marcus, a hope he had been afraid to feel. They sat in silence for a while, simply existing in each other's presence beneath the alien stars. Eventually, Celine stood, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. "I should rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." Marcus stood as well. "Celine, thank you for everything today." She paused at the door, turning back to him. "Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself." "Good night, Marcus. Good night." The following week passed in a rhythm of hard work and quiet companionship. Each morning they checked the test plot where Celine had planted the glowing seeds. By the third day, tiny shoots emerged, their leaves carrying a faint luminescence that intensified at night. By the fifth day, the growth was undeniable, plants thriving in soil that had produced nothing for years. Marcus watched in amazement as the plot transformed, becoming a small oasis of vibrant life amid the struggling orchard. Celine monitored everything carefully, taking notes in a small journal, adjusting variables, explaining each observation to Marcus. "The seeds are establishing their root network," she explained one morning, kneeling beside a particularly robust plant. "Soon they will begin releasing compounds that benefit the surrounding soil. Within another week, we can plant normal crops here, and they will thrive." Marcus crouched beside her, studying the plant with new appreciation. "I have never seen anything grow this fast." Selena's fingers brushed the leaves gently. These seeds were designed over generations to be aggressive colonizers of damaged land. They grow quickly, spread efficiently, and prepare ground for sustainable agriculture. She looked at Marcus seriously. "Once we expand this to the entire orchard, your farm will be transformed. But we must be strategic about how we do it. If your neighbors or the authorities notice too dramatic a change, they will investigate." Marcus understood her concern. We will say we discovered a new irrigation technique. Maybe claim we are using imported fertilizers. Celine nodded approvingly. Yes. Something plausible, but boring enough that people will not look too closely. They smiled at each other. Conspirators in a plan that could change everything as the days progressed. Marcus found himself increasingly aware of Selena's presence. The graceful way she moved through the orchard, the focused expression she wore when examining plants, the rare but genuine smiles that appeared when something pleased her. One afternoon, while working together to repair a section of fencing, their hands brushed accidentally. Celine did not pull away immediately, instead letting the contact linger for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Marcus felt electricity in that brief touch, awareness that their relationship was shifting from partnership toward something deeper. That evening, while preparing dinner, Celine stood close enough that Marcus could feel warmth radiating from her skin. "You are a good teacher," she said quietly. "I have learned much about terrafold farming from you." Marcus focused on chopping vegetables to avoid meeting her eyes. "You already knew more than I did." "I have learned from you." Selena's hand covered his gently, stilling his work. "We have learned from each other. That is how real partnerships work." Marcus looked up then, finding her face close to his, amber eyes searching his expression. For a moment, the kitchen felt charged with possibility. Then Celine stepped back slightly, releasing his hand. "Sorry, I did not mean to make you uncomfortable." Marcus surprised himself by catching her hand before she could retreat fully. "You did not. I am just not used to this. Someone caring whether I am comfortable." Celine's expression softened. "I care, Marcus. More than I expected to." They stood that way, hands clasped, the dinner temporarily forgotten. Marcus felt his pulse quicken, awareness of Celine not just as a partner but as a woman, complicated and beautiful and present in a way that made his carefully constructed solitude feel suddenly lonely. "I care too," he admitted quietly. Celine squeezed his hand once before releasing it, but the warmth in her smile remained. "Good. Now let us finish cooking before we burn dinner." The next morning, Marcus woke to find Celine already outside. Standing in the test plot with the rising sun illuminating her silver hair like a halo, he watched from the farmhouse window as she moved among the glowing plants, touching leaves with reverent care, clearly pleased with their progress. Something about the scene, her alone in the dawn light, surrounded by life she had brought to dead soil, struck Marcus as profound. She was not just helping him save the farm. She was creating something entirely new, merging her world's knowledge with his world's needs. When she noticed him watching, she waved, her smile bright and unguarded. Marcus felt something settle in his chest, certainty that bringing Celine here was the best decision he had ever made. He stepped outside to join her, ready for whatever challenges the day would bring, confident they would face them together. By the second week, the test plot had become a spectacle of growth. Plants that normally took months to mature were reaching full size in days. The soil itself looked darker, richer, alive in ways Marcus had not seen since childhood. Neighboring farmers began noticing, walking past the farm's boundary to peer curiously at the transformed section. Marcus intercepted them with prepared explanations about experimental fertilizers and improved irrigation timing. Most accepted these answers with skeptical nods, though he saw calculation in their eyes. If his farm could recover, perhaps theirs could too. One afternoon, a man named Garrett from the adjacent property stopped by, his weathered face showing open curiosity. "Marcus, what are you doing different? That section looks like paradise compared to the rest." Marcus kept his expression neutral, just trying some techniques Celine brought from her homeworld. Different approach to soil treatment. Garrett's eyes shifted to where Celine worked among the plants, her violet skin and silver hair marking her as obviously foreign. "Your contract bride knows farming?" Marcus heard the skepticism in his tone. "She knows more than most people I have met, including me." Garrett grunted, clearly unimpressed. "Well, whatever you are doing, it is working. If you ever want to share the technique, I would pay good credits." Marcus smiled noncommittally. "If it proves sustainable, we will talk." After Garrett left, Selena approached Marcus with concern on her face. He was asking about the plants. Marcus nodded. He is curious. We expected that. Celine bit her lower lip. A gesture he had learned meant she was worried. Curiosity leads to investigation. We need to expand the planting soon, make it seem like a gradual improvement rather than a miracle, Marcus agreed. Tonight, we will prepare the next section. Quietly. That evening, after dark, they worked under Terrafold's moons, expanding the treated soil gradually into the main orchard. Celine moved efficiently, mixing her cultures into the ground while Marcus followed with traditional tools, making the work appear conventional. They worked in companionable silence, their movements synchronized from days of partnership. At one point, Celine stumbled over a root in the darkness, and Marcus caught her automatically with his left arm, steadying her against his body. She did not pull away immediately, instead resting briefly against his chest, both of them breathing hard from exertion. "Thank you," she murmured. Marcus became acutely aware of her warmth, the floral scent of her skin, the way her hair brushed against his jaw. "I will not let you fall," he said, voice rougher than intended. Celine looked up at him, moonlight reflecting in her amber eyes. "I believe you." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Celine gently extracted herself, clearing her throat. "We should finish before dawn." They completed the expansion work just as the first hints of light appeared on the horizon. Both exhausted, they returned to the farmhouse and collapsed at the kitchen table. Selina's head tilted back against her chair, eyes closed, silver hair spilling over her shoulders. Marcus allowed himself to simply look at her, appreciating the elegant line of her throat, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the peaceful expression on her face. "Stop staring," she said, without opening her eyes, but with a smile playing at her lips. Marcus felt heat rise in his face, caught again. "How did you know?" Now she opened her eyes, looking at him with amused warmth. "I can feel it when you look at me. Your attention has weight." Marcus had no response to that, unsure if he should apologize or acknowledge the growing attraction between them. Celine saved him from deciding by standing and stretching. "I am going to wash and rest for a few hours. Wake me if anything important happens." Marcus watched her disappear into her room, then sat alone in the quiet farmhouse, processing the complex emotions swirling through him. When he had signed the contract for a bride, he had expected practical partnership at best, tolerable cohabitation at minimum. Instead, Celine had become essential to his days, someone whose presence he actively missed during moments apart. The attraction was undeniable now on both sides based on her lingering looks and careful touches, but he worried about rushing things, about assuming intimacy before genuine trust was fully established. Celine had shared her dangerous secret, trusted him with knowledge that could destroy her. That trust deserved respect and patience. He would let her set the pace, follow her lead in how their relationship developed, beyond partnership. Still, lying in his bed later, Marcus could not stop replaying the moment under the moons when she had rested against his chest, fitting there perfectly. The following weeks brought rapid change to the orchard. The glowing seeds spread their influence efficiently, transforming section after section of dead soil into rich, productive ground. Marcus and Celine worked dawn to dusk, planting traditional crops in the newly revived earth. Watching with satisfaction as everything thrived, the farm began producing again, not just surviving but genuinely productive for the first time in years. Marcus felt weight lifting from his shoulders, years of desperate struggle easing into cautious optimism. During this period, his relationship with Celine deepened naturally. They developed private jokes, shared comfortable silences, and occasionally allowed touches that lingered beyond necessity. One evening, while preparing dinner together in the cramped kitchen, they moved around each other in perfect synchronization, a wordless dance born from growing intimacy. Celine reached across Marcus for a spice jar, her body pressing briefly against his back. He felt her breath on his neck, warm and deliberate. "Sorry," she murmured. Though her tone suggested she was not sorry at all, Marcus turned to face her, finding her close enough to count individual strands of silver in her hair. "You are not sorry." Selena's lips curved into a genuine smile, not the polite expression she wore for others, but something real and slightly mischievous. "No, I am not. I like being close to you." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. I like it too. They stood that way, the dinner forgotten, both aware they were approaching a threshold in their relationship. Celine's hand came up slowly, giving Marcus time to retreat if he wished. When he did not move, her fingers brushed his cheek gently, exploring his features with the same careful attention she gave to plants. You are a good man, Marcus Venn. Better than I expected when I agreed to this contract. Marcus covered her hand with his own, holding it against his face. You were extraordinary, Celine. Better than I deserved. Her eyes glistened slightly, emotion breaking through her usual composure. We both deserved something good. Perhaps we found it. Marcus leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. Celine met him halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was gentle and exploratory, asking questions rather than making demands. She tasted faintly of the fruit they had been preparing, sweet and unexpected. When they separated, both were breathing harder, eyes searching each other's faces for reassurance. Was that all right? Marcus asked, suddenly uncertain. Celine answered by kissing him again, this time with more confidence, her free hand curling into the fabric of his shirt. They kissed until breathing became difficult, then separated reluctantly, foreheads resting together. More than all right, Celine whispered. The dinner burned slightly that evening, neither of them particularly caring. They ate, while sitting close at the table, shoulders touching, occasionally sharing soft smiles that held promise of more to come. After dinner, they moved to the porch, as had become their habit. But tonight, Celine curled against Marcus's side, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest. The farmhouse felt different now, charged with new energy that had nothing to do with glowing seeds or restored soil. That night, Celine paused at her bedroom door before entering. Marcus. He stopped in the hallway, turning back. Yes. She looked at him with vulnerability he rarely saw from her. I am glad I came here. I am glad it was you. Marcus crossed the distance between them in 3 steps, cupping her face gently with his hand. So my good night, Celine. He kissed her forehead softly, then forced himself to step back before his resolve weakened. Celine smiled, touched his chest once over his heart, then disappeared into her room. Marcus stood in the dark hallway for several minutes, feeling his heartbeat slowly return to normal, knowing that everything between them had fundamentally shifted. The contract that brought them together no longer mattered. What they were building now went far deeper than legal agreements or practical necessity. They were choosing each other consciously and completely. The transformation of the farm became impossible to ignore. Within a month, Marcus's orchard went from dying to thriving spectacularly. Trees that had been bare were now laden with fruit, their branches heavy with produce beyond anything the region had seen in years. Word spread through the farming community quickly, bringing more curious neighbors and eventually unwanted attention from beyond. One afternoon, a sleek corporate transport landed near the orchard without prior authorization. 2 men in expensive business attire stepped out, flanked by security personnel. Marcus, working with Celine among the trees, felt ice settle in his stomach. This was exactly what they had feared. The taller man, introducing himself as Director Vance from Terrafold Agricultural Consortium, surveyed the orchard with unconcealed interest. Mr. Venn, your farm has attracted considerable attention. Our analysts notice your production reports jumped 300% in under 2 months. We are very interested in understanding how you achieved this. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Hard work and better irrigation management. Nothing revolutionary. Director Vance smiled without warmth. Come now, we both know that is insufficient explanation. This level of transformation suggests advanced biological intervention. Genetic modification, perhaps? Restricted compounds. His eyes shifted to Celine, who stood slightly behind Marcus, her face carefully blank. Or perhaps your off-world bride brought something interesting with her. Marcus felt anger flare, carefully controlled. My wife brought farming knowledge from her culture. Nothing illegal. Vance's smile widened. Wife, I thought she was a contract arrangement. How touching that you have become attached. He pulled out a portable scanner. Nevertheless, we will need to inspect your soil and crops. Corporate charter grants us authority to investigate unusual agricultural developments that might affect market stability. Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between Vance and Celine. You have no authority to enter my property without legal justification. The security personnel moved slightly, hands near weapons, and tension spiked immediately. Selena's hand touched Marcus's back, a gentle warning to stay calm. Vance's expression hardened. Mr. Venn, we can do this cooperatively, or we can return with enforcement authority. Terraforming resources are strictly controlled. If you are using restricted biotechnology, that is a colonial violation with serious consequences. Marcus felt Selena's hand press more firmly against his back, grounding him. I am using no restricted technology. My improvement comes from traditional agricultural techniques and hard work. If you want to investigate, bring proper warrants and oversight. Until then, leave my property. Vance studied Marcus for a long moment, clearly calculating whether to escalate. Finally, he gestured to his security. Very well. We will return with appropriate authorization. Enjoy your prosperity while it lasts, Mr. Venn. These things have a way of being temporary. He departed with casual arrogance, leaving Marcus and Celine standing tensely in the orchard. The moment the transport disappeared over the ridge, Celine grabbed Marcus's arm urgently. We have a problem. If they scan the soil properly, they will detect the foreign microorganisms. The genetic signature will lead directly to Aurelus and the restricted biological programs. Marcus turned to her, seeing real fear in her amber eyes for the first time. What will happen to you? Selena's voice was steady, despite the fear. Best case, they deport me and confiscate everything. Worst case, they charge me with biological terrorism for importing restricted organisms. I could spend decades in detention. Marcus felt cold fury replace his initial anger. No, that will not happen. We will find a way to protect you. Celine shook her head. Marcus, you cannot fight a corporation. They have resources, legal authority, political connections. If they want to take this from us, they will. Marcus cupped her face with his hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. Then we make it not worth their effort. We spread the seeds to every struggling farm in the region before they return. Make the transformation so widespread they cannot contain it.